Happy Wednesday, May 1st, everyone. Hunter here at Weather on the Go. Hope everybody's having a great start to the new month. In today's weather forecast, we have an enhanced risk, again, for severe weather today across the plains. We'll detail what you can see with the storms, the storm risks, and also the timing of the storms as well as we go through the day. And looking at the weekend ahead, we have a temperature and precipitation trends we'll go over as well, and looking at a significant storm system early next week, which could bring more significant severe weather. We'll detail that later on in today's weather forecast. Hey, if you guys are new here to Weather on the Go, not a better time now to subscribe to the channel so you guys stay updated on the weather forecast for your area all the way throughout this year. Also, be sure to press the like button down below. It helps out more than you know. So let's look at the storm reports yesterday, and we had a lot of tornado reports from southern Iowa all the way down here near the Red River Valley into southwestern Oklahoma. We had 13 total tornado reports. This number may grow as more storm surveys are continuing to be underway. We have hail and wind reports as well from those areas from the Midwest down through the plains, with a total of 154 severe weather reports all told from yesterday. Now, we wake up this morning with temperatures pretty mild down here across the southern plains and those very areas that did see those tornadoes in southwestern Oklahoma. Temperatures there into the lower and middle 70s. Further east, temperatures are to the 50s and 60s out here. A little bit cooler, though, across the Pacific Northwest waking up this morning into Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and westward towards the Pacific Northwest and the Cascades, seeing temperatures sub-freezing into the 20s and 30s there in those higher elevations. Now, going into this afternoon, more of a summertime feel across the Gulf Coast and into the southern plains, areas in West Texas, southeast New Mexico, very dry ground down there. Temperatures will heat up very quickly into the upper 80s to mid 90s, near 90 a few areas down here near the Gulf Coast, including Florida this afternoon. And looking at the days ahead here on Thursday, the warmer air will stick with us across the eastern two-thirds of the country on Thursday and on Friday as well. So definitely seeing more spring-like temperatures to go around. Here's the synoptic pattern we're dealing with today. We have a ridge across the east that brings warmer temperatures. You have a trough across the west that brings cooler temperatures, and kind of right in between there, that's the battleground setting up for the potential of severe weather, and that's what we actually do have as we go through today. The Storm Prediction Center's latest day one outlook showing a level 3 out of 5, an enhanced risk of severe weather in this orange shaded color across western portions of Oklahoma down into west central Texas. Watching out for that, but a large slight risk area, level 2 out of 5 in the yellow from southern Nebraska through much of Kansas, Oklahoma, including the Oklahoma City area, down here into toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and much of central and eastern Texas. Looking at the hazards here, we're going to see more very large hail potential as we go through the day from Kansas down into western Oklahoma and west Texas, especially there into portions of that red shaded color in western Oklahoma and northwest Texas. We do have the threat for some damaging winds over 60 miles per hour here, especially into west central Texas today in this 30% area. And then we have a threat for a few tornadoes here, again, from southern Kansas through western Oklahoma and west central Texas here. We'll be keeping an eye on that. That is a 5% shading in the brown, a 2% shading there in the green. Let's look at the setup here for severe weather today. Dew points advecting north out of the Gulf of Mexico into the 60s we go, mid and upper 60s. That's ahead of the dry line. That will contribute to strong instability approaching 3,000 joules per kilogram by this afternoon and this evening. And speaking of the afternoon, our low-level jet will already be around 35 to 40 knots. That will increase to 55 knots as we go into this evening, especially with the strongest values up here into Kansas, western Oklahoma, and northwest Texas. But looking at this here into Kansas under the lens, you can see this evening the significant tornado parameter values are highest into southwestern but also central Kansas, and that happens to be just east of our low pressure. We always talk about the triple point here, folks. We have a 994 low pressure system in southeastern Colorado, warm front draped across Kansas, dry line here down into west Texas, that classic triple point up there in southwest Kansas, central Kansas, We need to keep an eye on that for tornado genesis potentially later on today, especially this evening. Let's go over the timing here so you know what you need to expect as we go through the day. This morning, we have some warm air advection moving northward, nothing more than a couple of showers or storms here. This afternoon, same thing. We may start to fire up some supercells down here into south central Texas and western Texas as we go into the afternoon. Those would be large hail and some wind producers. And then as we go into this evening, I'm most concerned about these supercells up here into Kansas near the triple point. They could acquire a lot more rotation, low-level shear up in this environment, so tornadoes will be most likely up there near the triple point, but also watching supercells developing into western Oklahoma and west Texas. Those could also acquire rotation and produce tornadoes, but also very large hail and some damaging winds. And then the consensus here is as we go into early Thursday morning, upscale growth into an MCS across Nebraska, northern Kansas into Iowa there, and northwest Missouri could lead to more heavy rain, but also the threat for some wind and hail up there, and maybe some lingering storms toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And tendency will be for storms to be stronger west of Dallas-Fort Worth, and as they move into the Metroplex early on before sunrise on Thursday, they will be on a weakening trend, but still some heavy downpours, some hail, and some gusty winds will be possible. Going into Thursday, same kind of pattern here. You got a ridge, warmer temperatures out east, cooler temperatures with the trough out west, kind of that battleground again happening in the middle of the country. It so happens to be in level 1 out of 5, a marginal risk in the dark green shaded color from parts of southwest Wisconsin and southeastern Minnesota, northwest Illinois through Iowa there into northern Missouri, extreme southeastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, central and western Oklahoma, and down here into Texas. We do have a threat for a few isolated severe storms. Hail is going to be a threat here, 5% shading there in the brown. Wind is going to be a threat, 5% shading again there in the brown. And in the dark green here, a 2% shading for tornadoes, a tornado or two up here into the Midwest. May be possible from Kansas City up toward Des Moines, eastward to Cedar Rapids, and perhaps Rockford, Illinois, as we go through the day on Thursday. Let's look at Thursday's setup here. Dew points into the 50s and 60s. Not as robust of a warm sector on Thursday as we see today, so that will lead to a little bit lower of instability as we go through tomorrow, but still enough to spark some severe weather in isolated instances, still seeing those 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram. And you can see the low-level jet as well, not as robust Thursday afternoon, seeing 55 knots, but it kind of weakens a little bit to 45 knots or so Thursday evening. So really not looking at that high of any values of our significant tornado parameter. So that is some good news. The tornado threat is kind of a secondary threat for tomorrow. So Thursday morning, ongoing MCS, our mesoscale convective system up here from Wisconsin into eastern Iowa, northern Missouri. This could bring a threat for some gusty winds, some heavy rain, of course, very efficient rainfall producers, some hail, and maybe an isolated tornado. Some storms ongoing across the lower Mississippi Valley from southeastern Oklahoma, southwestern Arkansas, east Texas into Louisiana there. Seeing some of that down toward Lake Charles. Going into Thursday afternoon, seeing more storms redeveloping over here into the Midwest. This could be on some outflow boundaries from the morning storms, from the morning MCS across this region. So scattered storms could be developing again from Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and Des Moines, southward there towards St. Joseph, Kansas City, and perhaps as far back there as Wichita. And then as we go through Thursday evening, we're kind of seeing a messy mode of storms here. Just a lot of multi-cell clusters and stuff like that. A couple supercells mixed in. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through Thursday evening. And then going into Friday, a diffuse cold front moving across portions of the Ohio Valley and the southern United States could bring the threat for maybe some heavier rainfall there. We're watching a new low pressure system on the lee side of the Rockies here. That could give us a severe weather threat again in the Central Plains into northeast Colorado, southern Nebraska, Kansas, and northwest Oklahoma with a level 1 out of 5, a marginal risk of severe storms. Probably more wind and hail versus tornado threat there on Friday. We'll keep a close eye on that. Rainfall amounts through Saturday, May 4th, you can see very heavy from the Midwest all the way down here into the lower Mississippi Valley and southern plains. Areas here from Iowa back through portions of Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, all the way south here in Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, all these areas will be seeing over 1 inch of rain at least. Some areas from east central Texas into Louisiana could be dealing with over 3 inches of rainfall going through the weekend time frame, and that is why there's a moderate risk for flash flooding potential today all the way through your Thursday morning commute just south of Dallas-Fort Worth on the I-35 corridor, places like Waco, and then down there towards portions of the Austin, Texas region. And then a large slight risk of flash flooding from Wisconsin all the way down here to Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi Thursday into Friday, so watching out for that along the Mississippi River Valley. And then going into this weekend, temperature anomalies for the most part here out east will be near normal to above normal, and then out west, so as a trough comes in, we're going to have well below normal temperature anomalies for Washington State, Oregon, California, and Nevada here. Let's look at our weekend temperatures. These are your highs on Saturday. And you can see nice spring-like temperatures across the eastern and southeastern U.S. A little bit cooler up here to the northwest. And then as we go into Saturday night, not a bad night for temperatures here. Look at that, 60s from the Ohio Valley all the way down there toward the Gulf Coast. Even some 70s mixed in for lows down there toward Houston and Corpus Christi. And then as we go into Sunday, yeah, more of the same. More spring-like and even summer-like temperatures developing near the Gulf Coast, well into the 80s, even 90s perhaps there from Naples to Fort Myers to even Tampa Bay, Florida on Sunday. And then looking at the precipitation on Saturday, it looks a lot worse than it will be. There's going to be scattered kind of popcorn storms here across the eastern and southeastern U.S. Not everybody will see a storm. A lot of dry hours here as well. It looks a lot more menacing than it will be. And again, that same thing will hold true with those popcorn pop-up storms in the afternoon, the heat of the day on Sunday. But if you get under one of those, they definitely could be producing some heavier rains. Notice, so you can see swaths of over 1 inch of rain. So those storms won't be moving very fast. There's not a lot of strong flow in this part of the country in the jet stream. So these storms will kind of be moving slow, producing some very heavy rainfall, very efficient rainfall producers through the weekend. And we mentioned the colder air across the west coast. Well, it's cold enough to produce some snow up here in the Cascades, over 1 foot of snow, perhaps approaching 2 feet there in the Cascades in Washington State, over 1 foot of snow there into parts of the Sierras in California, and a couple inches to several inches there across the central and northwestern Rockies this weekend as well. So watch out for that. Going into early next week, very interesting looking pattern here. We have kind of a squashed ridge across the eastern U.S. We have more of a trough kind of elongating from the northwest into the northern plains here. Watch late week. We have a ridge kind of becoming more established across the southeast, a trough becoming more established across the west, and that battleground we always talk about across the middle of the country. But before we get to that, let's look at our temperatures, because we're going to see a lot of heat building across the south late next week, nearing the triple digits, if not into the triple digits, into the Rio Grande Valley down here, even into West Texas, middle 90s as we go into later next week. Going across the southeast here from the coastal Carolinas through coastal Georgia into much of the state of Florida, into southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and even portions there of the New Orleans region, getting up into the low 90s for later next week. And all that heat will actually be fueling our next chance of significant severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center is already confident 6 days ahead of time in a level 2 out of 5, a slight risk of severe weather from Nebraska southward through Kansas, Oklahoma, and North Texas here. Where have we seen this before? This is going to happen again as we go into early next week, Monday into that Tuesday time frame. And I do expect, as this does get closer, this yellow shaded area to expand and maybe an orange shaded area. That enhanced risk probably getting an upgrade as we do get closer, because look at the parameters here. We got a very sharp dry line, very prolific dry line here across the plains. 60s, if not 70s dew points advecting north from the Gulf of Mexico into the plain states all the way up into the Midwest on Monday. Instability, weak to strong. It depends on where you are. Weak instability the further north you go. Strong instability the further south you go into Oklahoma and Texas. Very strong speed max on the base of this trough here. Negatively tilted trough by Monday. Very dynamic weather here in the mid-level jet. Very dynamic low-level jet on Monday. So this is a day that we'll have to watch on Monday, May 6th for widespread significant severe weather perhaps. Supercells squalls developing back in the western plains during the afternoon will grow upscale into a major line of storms, that squall line across the Midwest down into the southern plains Monday evening. So that will be something that we need to keep an eye on. Well, thank you guys so much for sticking with me along with the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. We'll keep you covered on the weather all the way throughout the entirety of this year. Also, make sure to press the like button, the thumbs up button down below to help get this information passed along to more and more people. I definitely appreciate it, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Wednesday out there.